Mark, I saw you at the White House earlier, looking very cold, north face of the White House.
Yeah, the weather has changed overnight. It was very, very cold.
Yeah. Can I give you a tip from our old friend Kay Burley, Sky News presenter?
Kay spent many days. Didn't she say that she'd done more live television than anyone else globally? That's what she claimed.
Well,
anyway.
I wouldn't argue with her about that or anything else.
Wouldn't.
But I can tell you her top tip for live broadcasting in the cold
Yeah.
is to take a newspaper and stand on it.
There you
Keeps
go.
your feet warm. Her legacy lives on. Cheers, Kay. I'm James Matthews on Trump 100 today. Trump versus the BBC. He says it trashed his reputation and he's threatening to sue for $1 billion.
And I'm Mark Stone. I've been at the White House where a former jihadi commander linked to Al-Qaeda was welcomed to the Oval Office. James, let's begin with the BBC. Donald Trump has been at war with American media for years. He loves to hate the fake news mainstream media, doesn't he? As well as trashing them daily. Spoiler, he watches them incessantly, I think, and he certainly needs them. But he still trashes them every day, and he sues them successfully. ABC and CBS know all about that.
Yeah, he is the litigious president, and legal action now on the horizon against the Beeb. He's issued an ultimatum. We've got a letter, Mark, from his lawyers, Brito PLLC of Coral Gables, Florida, no less than 4 pages.
Yeah, and it doesn't pull the punches. It details how a BBC Panorama report aired just before the election last year spliced together 3 separate parts of a Trump speech, creating one sentence which he didn't say. The speech was the one that he gave just before the storming of the Capitol building here in DC on January the 6th, 2021.
Yeah, let's give you a flavour of the lawyer's letter. It says, due to their salacious nature, the fabricated statements that were aired by the BBC have been widely disseminated throughout various digital mediums, which have reached tens of millions of people worldwide. Consequently, the BBC has caused President Trump to suffer overwhelming financial and reputational harm.
Yeah, and it goes on to say the BBC's reckless disregard for the truth underscores the actual malice behind the decision to publish the wrongful content, given the plain falsity of the statements. And then come the demands to the BBC. President Trump, it says, hereby demands that you, the BBC, number 1, immediately issue a full and fair retraction of the documentary and any and other false, defamatory, disparaging, misleading and inflammatory statements about President Trump in a conspicuous manner as they were originally published. Number 2, it says the BBC should immediately issue an apology for the false, defamatory, disparaging, misleading and inflammatory statements about President Trump. And number 3, James, appropriately compensate President Trump for the harm caused.
Yeah, and then the kicker, the moment when Donald Trump will come knocking on the BBC's door in the last paragraph. If the BBC doesn't comply with the above by November the 14th, 2025 at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, President Trump will be left with no alternative but to enforce his legal and equitable rights, all of which are expressly reserved and are not waived, including by filing legal action for no less than $1 billion in damages. And then the very dark last sentence, the BBC is on notice.
Yeah, quite the letter, 4 pages. We know that it landed a little while ago on the desk of the BBC's chief legal counsellor. And I imagine, James, that behind the fallout that we're all seeing at the BBC right now and that we've been reporting on and everyone else has for a couple of days now, and the search for a new Director General, a new head of news as well, behind all that, there must be a team somewhere within Broadcasting House who are now trying to formulate a response to that letter and perhaps come up with a response to those 3 points. It's going to be quite some task. We saw the fallout, didn't we, over the course of the weekend? The Director General, Tim Davie, and Head of News, Deborah Turness, both resigning over accusations of bias and failing to deal with this Panorama howler when it first emerged internally in May. The BBC's chair has offered his apology, but Trump is clearly hungry for his own sense of justice.
Yeah, I'm no lawyer, Mark, but I find it difficult to see how the BBC gets out of paying the president, frankly. It's already issued an apology. And when you look at the legal action Donald Trump has taken against US networks, this one would appear to me to be more straightforward for his legal team than the others. So
Yeah, you're right.
a difficult one. But, it's not the first time Trump can smell the money in all of this. We spoke about CBS and ABC. He got $16 million and $15 million from them, respectively. I suppose that might be a guide to the kind of amount we're talking about when he refers to compensation, and clearly a worry for the BBC, a worry for the licence fee payers.
Yeah, just on that, I mean, the $1 billion is obviously the opening demand. I don't think there's any sense that actually, even if he was to win this lawsuit, and we don't know whether he'll even go forward with it, but even if he was to win, it's not the case that the BBC is going to have to give away that much money. But it's a huge amount of money. The BBC's annual budget is about £5.5 billion.
Yeah, will they risk it in court for $1 billion? I fancy they won't. But it's a bigger story, isn't it, Mark, than just the BBC. Trump routinely rails against outlets for negative coverage, and he covets those organisations that are more sympathetic to him. And I think that is the bigger picture in all this, that Trump narrative, that critical coverage amounts to fake news. He bangs on about it all the time. A mistake on this scale, it does rather threaten to undermine the media at large. That effort that we all make to scrutinise the White House at a time when scrutiny has never been more important. I think this will tend to increase the percentage doubt in people's minds that every time Donald Trump cries fake news, he has a point.
Yeah, I agree. It's a very difficult time, I think. And I don't think we should lose sight of the fact, or in any way normalise the fact, that the US president and his team seem now to be seeking to undermine the BBC. They are happy to be piling in to all of this.
Yeah.
It's also worth saying that the Panorama show was the product of an outside production company. It was not the work of BBC journalists, but it is undoubtedly the case that the managers at the top of the BBC, they are responsible for all the output, and they should have seen this when it was first broadcast just before the election, and they certainly should have picked up on it when the internal memo was circulated to them in May. But, as I'm sure you do, James, I know a lot of people who work at the BBC. I've spoken to some of them over the course of the last 24 hours. Indeed, there were some BBC folk down at the White House. I can tell you that they're devastated. They're deeply angry. They feel like they've been let down by a hatchet job by this outside production company, and then further let down by the bosses who didn't spot and deal with it there and then, either when the report was checked initially or when the memo came out in May, as I say.
There will be consequences, won't there, Mark? As we both know, media organisations these days are very reluctant to go to court for whatever the reason, very sensitive to the possibility of being sued. Even if they win in court, the costs of that can be prohibitive. I'll tell you something else that caught my attention over the weekend, the same day that the story blew up, was this business of Donald Trump issuing pardons for a number of political allies, more than 70 of them, who were accused of trying to overturn the 2020 election. Rudy Giuliani, Mark Meadows' former chief of staff, and some people who'd already pleaded guilty, which of course is hugely controversial to pardon them. But I do wonder, on a day when they're able to trumpet their story of the last election, their version of January 6th, talk about a rigged election, and put that together with the misreporting by the mainstream media, that's not endorsed or backed up by the BBC's mea culpa, but it's not contradicted either. Now, Mark, moving on, you've been down at the very cold White House for a meeting that falls into the extraordinary category.
Yeah, it certainly does. Had the BBC not been such a dominant story in the UK, another moment would have been front and centre, and it certainly was over here in the United States, because a man who once had a $10 million bounty on his head was in the Oval Office today. A man who fought the Americans in Iraq, was imprisoned by the Americans in a notorious Iraqi prison, was the leader of the Al-Qaeda offshoot in Syria. He is now the Syrian president. Ahmed al-Shara led the overthrow of the Assad regime this year, and his journey to the Oval Office is truly remarkable.
His meeting represents a pragmatic alignment of interests. He's renounced his jihadi ties and now seems wholly focused on the rebuilding and the remaking of Syria. He wants help and investment to rebuild his country.
Yeah, and for the Trump administration, Syria represents opportunity, economic opportunity, investment, yes, all of that, but diplomatic and geopolitical opportunity too. President Trump wants to further his normalization deals between Israel and the Arab world. And Syria, Israel's neighbor, could become part of that sometime soon. There are, though, obviously huge challenges. Sectarian conflict in Syria is bubbling. For now, though, al-Shara does seem to have managed it, and appears at least to be getting a grip of it.
Yeah, reconstruction and reconciliation post-conflict is no easy task. The Middle East is full of examples of that. A lack of sustained economic development creates a climate for sectarian violence, corruption, the circumstances for breakdown. When he lifted sanctions, Donald Trump, well, he said it gave Syrians a chance at greatness. Maintaining momentum is the key to preserving that, and Trump's, well, he's certainly engaging with the responsibility that he has, and he very much has to.
Yeah, it was interesting, James, that no reporters were permitted into the room for the meeting. I wondered what form it would take. We got down there earlier. I've been to so many moments now where world leaders have arrived at the White House. Very often there's a guard of honor, and they drive in their armored vehicle, pull up to the West Wing, and there's a handshake at the door, all the rest of it. There wasn't on this occasion.
He went in the back door, didn't he?
Yeah, well, the side door of the Oval Office, yeah. And I actually don't know why that was. I mean, it was clearly a sensitive meeting. There would be issues of translation as well. Ahmed al-Shara doesn't speak English, so that kind of would have slowed it down if Trump was going to have one of his, his to and fro, free-flowing news conferences. But, for whatever reason, a decision was made not to make it public. We did get some images, though, and if you're watching on the VOD, you can see them because they're historic, they're extraordinary. There is the former Al-Qaeda commander now in the Oval Office and sporting. This was interesting, I thought, James, sporting a white shirt and a red tie. Where have you seen that before?
Oh, Old Trafford.
Old Trafford, or wherever Donald
Trump's
is.
favourite attire.
Donald Trump's favourite attire, indeed. And so how smart of Ahmed al-Shara to decide to put on his red tie too. J.D. Vance, the vice president, he was in the room. Interestingly, he's the guy who just last week suggested that the administration needs to focus on the home front after disappointing election results that we talked about in New York, New Jersey, and in Virginia. So maybe that was one reason why they decided not to have this particular meeting with a whole load of reporters.
Yeah, and not to overexpose it, given the criticism, not just from J.D. Vance, albeit oblique criticism from him, but very much front and centre criticism he received from Marjorie Taylor Greene. She was
our old friend.
Our old friend, his old friend.
Martha's old friend.
I'm not so sure these days. Of course, ultra loyal until recently, but she's been critical of Donald Trump lately. And today she posted on X, she wants to see, and this is what she said, non-stop meetings at the White House on domestic policy, not foreign policy, and foreign countries' leaders basically concentrate on the home front, President Trump. Donald Trump was asked about this. There was a news conference in the Oval Office, asked about his old friend Marjorie.
I don't know what happened to Marjorie. She's a nice woman, but I don't know what happened. She's lost her way, I think. But I have to view the presidency as a worldwide situation, not locally. I mean, we could have a world that's on fire where wars come to our shores very easily if you had a bad president.
He's not wrong in one sense. She does seem to have had a complete personality makeover or transplant over the course of the past few weeks, doesn't she? She has changed her tune and her style and her tone completely. It's quite remarkable.
For me, I don't know about you, Mark, but Donald Trump was sounding a bit lovelorn there. His old friend ditching him. Politically, at least, he will be bruised by, this loyal friend seemingly turning away. Interestingly, the big question is what's happened to Marjorie? Why is there a distance between her and the old pal? Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, the Democrat, her theory, and she's put this on social media, she reckons Marjorie had ambitions to be a senator, but Donald Trump rejected that, and she's now on a revenge mission, according to AOC. That's all unconfirmed. That's an accusation from the other side. Who knows? But it's becoming troublesome from Donald Trump. Bearing in mind, remember, Marjorie Taylor Greene, she's all about releasing the Epstein files as well.
Yeah, and she's going to have more fodder next week because into the Oval Office will roll the Saudi Crown Prince, MBS, Mohammed bin Salman, will be here, I think, on Tuesday next week. Again, the talk there will be of foreign policy, not ideal, as we've been saying, for a president who's being urged to focus on the home front. But I imagine he will likely remind Americans of the massive inward investment that can come from rich Arab nations like the Saudis. So that's going to be one to watch over the course of the week ahead.
Now, on matters domestic, the big story in the United States is the government shutdown and seemingly its end after 41 days and counting. People have been going without food, without pay, flights have been disrupted, museums closed. Well, now a sufficient number of Democrat senators have come over to the Republican government side, and they're backing a bill that would reopen the government and recommence funding through to the end of January, assuming it gets through a couple of hurdles, the House of Representatives and the signing by the president himself.
Yeah, of course, this is likely to further divide the Democrats. They're already squabbling about which form of politics is the way forward nationally. Is it Mamdani and his socialism, or is it a more moderate form of the Democratic Party that is a winner nationally? They're arguing about that, and now on the left of the Democratic Party they will be very, very angry. They are very, very angry that some in the Democrats seem to be giving way to the Republicans. As part of the deal, government funding would extend until January the 30th. So mark your diary for that being the next big ding-dong. They are just kicking the can down the road as ever. The reason it could further divide the Democrats is because the deal does not include their demand all along that the extension includes medical subsidies under the Affordable Care Act. But the Republicans have agreed on a vote in December on the Affordable Care Act. They have said they were also willing to reinstate federal officials who've been fired over the last few months. The other thing, James, that the Democrats have managed to win is an extension to food stamp funding. We talked about this last week, the so-called SNAP benefits, 40 million or so Americans who get these benefits. That would be extended until the end of 2026. So that is a bit of a win for the Democrats. But in short, the shutdown could end soon, but expect two big new fights, one in December over healthcare and another one in January when they'll need to pick up that can that they've just kicked away.
You mentioned that Democrats unhappy. They are not with these colleagues who have folded on this. Their point is that they are at a moment, they reckon, when they've rocked Donald Trump on his heels and that they're on solid ground with the public. I wonder if an example of that, Mark, came at the Washington Commanders game on Sunday evening. Did you see that?
Yeah, a bit of booing.
A bit of booing for the president. Let's have a listen and a watch.
Please welcome the 45th and 47th President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, and Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, as the President swears in enlistees of our United States military.
We didn't know he was going to go. This was when he flew back from Florida, and we thought he was going to go straight from Joint Base Andrews to the White House. But instead, the first thing that happened is that an extraordinary low fly by Air Force One. Did you see that?
Didn't.
Absolutely extraordinary. Over the stadium, the plane flew lower than I've seen a jumbo jet fly. Very low. I mean, it was, and when they put it out on,
He didn't parachute, did he?
No, he didn't. But when they put the video out on social media, and of course, guess which tune they used?
Tell me.
Top Gun, obviously.
Top
But
choice.
it looked visually very impressive. The plane flying low over the stadium. Then he landed, went to the stadium, got out, and you just heard the boos there. Some cheering, of course, but the boos felt a bit louder, right?
Yeah, quite a spectacle on a number of levels. But the Democrats certainly are buoyant. They reckon that Trump is somewhat on the hook on the back of last week's elections and so on. So they're angry at the Democrats who changed their stance on this business of the shutdown. Those who did, they've been queuing up to explain themselves on the airwaves today. Essentially, they're saying, look, you cannot stand by and watch 40 million people go hungry. they make the point that this argument will come around again. We'll come back for debate, as you say, in January. That's the time to revisit this business at a time when they can frame their, I suppose, early campaigning for the midterms next year, and as they see it, can invoke their support for the poor right now in the short term and for cheaper healthcare in the longer term.
January. It'll be much colder at the White House then.
It doesn't get any colder.
I'll need a few newspapers under my feet.
Thanks very much indeed for listening and for watching. That's all we've got time for today. Cheers.
We will see you tomorrow. Don't forget, trump100@sky.uk is the email address. Send us your thoughts, questions, anything else, and we will do our best to answer them. Bye for now.